Now that you're familiar with the texture element, let's talk about why and how we use texture in a work of art. Texture, both actual and implied, can dramatically enhance a work of art. It adds realism, emotional qualities, interest, and intrigue. Here are some examples of what texture can do for you. Texture can define shapes and areas and identify objects. Van Gogh's drawing is a perfect example of identifying objects by creating a variety of implied textures. Texture can draw attention by creating an area of visual interest or a focal point. Texture can create contrast. This contrast can happen between textures of different materials, when an artist combines different media in one piece of art. Like in this statue, Degas juxtaposes the smooth and cold heaviness of the bronze with the light and airy silk and cotton. Contrast can be conceptual, when texture does not fit an ordinary expectation of an object's surface. Texture can balance a composition by adding or removing an extra visual weight. Intricate, detailed textures have more visual weight than simple, smooth textures, regardless of how light or dark or what color the textures are. Texture supports an illusion of depth. This concept is a part of aerial perspective. When we want to create an illusion of depth, more detailed textures are depicted in the foregrounds, as were simplified textures in the back. Texture can create rhythm and patterns in an artwork. Rhythm is created when elements are repeated to create a path for the viewer's eyes to follow. This movement can be achieved by all elements of art, including texture. Texture can definitely create drama. This drama can be achieved by contrasting opposite textures or by creating rhythm and movement in an artwork, using big brush strokes and a thick paint application as an example. Artists can use special surface treatments or drawing and painting techniques to add a specific emotional quality to the art piece. It is especially interesting to experiment with texture painting techniques. Here are some of them. Sgraffito, scratching off the top painted layer to reveal the layers below. Impasto, applying thick strokes of paint with a brush or a palette knife. Sponging, applying paint by dabbing a sponge over dried paint layers. Imprinting, stamping random materials, even objects, onto a wet layer of paint. Brush strokes, manipulating paint application by changing size, thickness, direction, and the type of a brush. Shading techniques, switching strokes to mimic the textures. Applying patterns, using different types of shapes as pattern elements. Extra materials, using things like salt, sand, gel mediums, and other materials to the painted surface. Using mixed media. This is always fun. Use different drawing, painting, and three-dimensional materials in an art piece. Other elements add their emotional qualities to the texture element. When creating implied textures, it is important to create an illusion of a texture belonging to the object's surface, if the surface is not flat. Artists modify the texture pattern to create an illusion of it wrapping the object. That means you can alter the size, space, value, and details of the texture elements to achieve this wrapping effect. Invented texture is a form of visual texture. Invented texture is an illusion of a texture created by the use of patterns. A repetition of an element or a group of elements that is called a motif can create an illusion of texture. This repetition does not need to be mathematically consistent. There are patterns, and there are pattern-based designs, often called tangles. Tangles are freehand-drawn patterns that don't have a strict grid structure. The designs are flowing from one motif to another, creating an interesting rhythm and, in addition to being very relaxing to draw, can become works of art in their own right. This is where the wrapping concept is really important if you want your designs to have a three-dimensional quality. An artwork can be created without the use of texture as an art element. But texture creates beauty and adds realism to your work. It can support the message of your artwork, like an icing on the cake. Even though texture is not as vital in a work of art as line or shape or color, it is more difficult to draw or recreate. Developing and improving your texture skills will make your art more natural, realistic, and emotional. Practicing texture drawing will improve your overall drawing and shading skills. Bottom line, don't neglect textures.